Good day. Welcome to our devotional for today. It's Thursday, and it's just about noon. I'm a little early today. I have an appointment I have to have my regular time. So today I'm a little early, but hopefully you this video finds you in a good place yourself, wherever you're at, whenever you're watching it. A beautiful sunny moment here in Nova Scotia in our fall. We're looking at Proverbs verse by verse. So we're in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 15 today. And just to set this up, as I have been, just in case you haven't been along, Proverbs chapter 2 is the second, is a kind of a little speech given telling the reader that if we will pursue God's wisdom, treasure it, value it, basically internalize it, if we pursue God's wisdom, as outlined in the book of Proverbs in particular, that it will teach us and guard us and shield us. It'll teach us the ability to make discerning decisions, good decisions that will guard us and shield us from all these various things in life. And in particular, the last couple of verses have been focusing on the idea of protecting us from certain type of people. And much of the second chapter talks about this, how one of the dangers in life is these just certain people that have chosen a dark path rather than a good one, or a righteous path. And so in verse 15, one of the people that it will help defend us from, it mentions this in verse 15. It says, those whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. The last couple of devotionals, we've talked about other parts of the description of these people who've left the path of righteousness. They walk down the path of darkness. And I've talked a bit about being careful about who we associate with, who we allow to influence us. And today I want to talk about this idea from another angle, from verse 15, those whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Not only does the wisdom of Proverbs teach us how to not become one of these people or to join these people in their path, but it also helps us have the ability to discern that these people are trying to influence us. You can learn the wisdom of God, and it can give you a kind of a shield in order to be able to determine and look and go, hey, this person's crooked, devious. They're not trustworthy. There's something wrong here. One of the Christian virtues is this idea of faithfulness or trustworthiness, or consistency or honesty. There's different ways we can talk about it, different angles of this, but one of the wonderful things about walking in God's way is learning to be a faithful, trustworthy, consistent, honest person. And that's wise, it's moral, it's right, and Proverbs does a lot to teach us about that. But part of the value of Proverbs is learning how to be able to perceive and discern the person who is not faithful, trustworthy, consistent, honest. The people that walk in a path of immorality tend to be, well, they all will become unpredictable, unstable, untrustworthy, dishonest. And that's the thing, it just follows. And so that's kind of what this is warning or promising here, is that when we embrace God's wisdom, that's one of the benefits. You start to be able to see these and be protected and be able to handle and deal with people who are crooked and devious. So let's do our 4 questions. Question 1, why would the dark path necessarily be unstable? Like, why am I so assertive about that? That's what happens when people walk that path. And the reason is because there's no foundation on a path, on the dark path, right? So when we choose to walk in the light, to walk in God's wisdom and moral, proper uprightness, when we choose that wise, upright path, we have made in our lives a foundation. We've built something solid. That's not us, right? We put our foundation on God's truth, on God's authority. We build our life on this idea that this is bigger and more important and more solid than I am. So I'm going to treat it as rock solid in my life, something I can't change. I can't adapt this. This is God's. So I'm going to build on top of it. And what it does is it removes you as the source or foundation of your own moral code, your own moral life. People who leave that behind, well, what's their foundation? self, right? Then it's whatever they want, whatever they think will get them where they want to be at any given time. Their appetite becomes their god. There is no authority higher than them, and so they can justify to themselves any actions they take. There's no foundation, and so people that walk on that path ultimately become more and more corrupted by that path, and they're more and more willing to do whatever, and less trustworthy, more and more dangerous, because a person like that has no foundation. They have no moral code. They have no higher authority than themselves, and so it's very, very unstable. A person like that isn't trustworthy and isn't consistent. They will change from time to time depending on whatever happens to be their particular appetite or whim at any given moment. Now, that's not to say that there can't be very shrewd people and that walk the dark path. They can become very shrewd. If you think about like one of the worst case scenarios, someone's like a sociopath can be very charismatic, very clever, but very immoral and not trustworthy, very unsafe. It's this idea that when you have no foundation of honesty or of morality or wisdom, then you do go to an unstable place, and ultimately it's destructive to your life as well as all those around you. So question 2, what does devious mean? In this text, it says, it's talking about people who are crooked in their way, crooked and devious in their ways, right? So devious, we can think about something, the word devious, I guess, in kind of I think the older English version of that was the idea of a roundabout, right? Being deviating, right? Going around the long way. But in a more general sense, what we mean when we talk about devious, it goes along with that idea of being crooked, right? This is straight, this is crooked, well, devious, a roundabout, right? It's indirect, and I guess the idea here is, have you ever met people who always have an ulterior motive? They say this, but they mean that. They're never really straightforward, and when you talk to them, you get this sense, it's like, man, I can't really trust what this person's saying. They're not being sincere in their words. They're trying to manipulate me, or they're trying to get around me somehow, and that's the idea of the deviousness, and that's what happens when we walk a path that's not righteous, it's not moral in God's eyes. Then what we do is we move to a place of, well, I'll do whatever I need to, or whatever I think will work to get me where I want to be. And so I'll go around this obstacle, around that obstacle. And it's very indirect, ulterior motives, right? It's manipulative. And that's the idea. And when we learn wisdom, you can learn to spot that more and to not be that way, but also to spot it and start to recognize the nature of people. And okay, and you can become you can have more of a guard in your life against the effects of such a thing. So I think it's worth talking about here. Question 3, what is the difference between manipulation and influence? Like these two things, I've often thought about this in my life, like, being in a career that I often try to influence people. And I've often thought, I wonder what the difference is between the two. I don't want to be a manipulative person, but I would like to have influence. And so there's this little bit of a tension that can occur in a person's life. And I think the key here is honesty. Like a person who is manipulative isn't honest. They're trying to get around you. And a person who is trying to influence you is actually trying to convince you. There's an honesty to that, right? If a person is like, well, I need to get you to do or think or be something I want you to be, whether you want to or not. I'm gonna just do whatever it takes to get you there, or lie if I need to, or I'm gonna whatever, I'm gonna misrepresent the truth, or I'm gonna, you can manipulate your feelings or whatever. There's all these things people do to try and force you to give them the outcome they want, because they're not being honest and they're not really being caring about you. Whereas a person with influence may still want you to come to a certain place, but they're not going to force it, and they're not going to try and do it against your will, so to speak. They're going to try and convince you and draw you to a place honestly. And it can be a subtle thing. It can be sometimes hard to know where that line is. It can be a little bit gray sometimes. But I think that's the big difference. And influence isn't wrong. I mean, as we go through Proverbs, we're going to find that actually influence is encouraged. There's ways to influence people that's honest and direct, rather than indirect and crooked and dishonest. And the more immoral a person is, the more likely they're going to fall into manipulation rather than good proper influencing. So that's the difference. So question 4, are there examples in our world today of this? Now this is a dangerous one, especially going online. So be a little bit careful here. I'm going to use generalizations, but I would argue that we can see examples of manipulation all over the world. And you think once again about the idea of the crooked or the devious person is a person who will say, here's my objective, and I'm going to get it by causing you to make it happen somehow, by getting you to think something or getting you to do something or believe something, whether you want to or not. That manipulative approach, people like that can tend to justify their actions because they will think my goal is a good goal. I'm the foundation of my own life, and I like my goals, and I want my goals, and since my goal is noble, I'm going to lie, steal, cheat to get there, and it's okay. And that kind of thing is what happens. And we see that in a lot of politicians, right? We see that in a lot of activists, honestly. I mean, I've read a lot of biographies and stories and of activists who said, well, we needed to get to the goal, so we just made up a statistic. Well, that's not honest, is it? Right? But they justify it with their own goal. It's, well, my goal is worthy enough that I can lie, steal, cheat to get there. Salespeople do this, right? Not all politicians, not all activists, not all salespeople, but salespeople. I mean, there was a book I have here on my shelf. It says "All Salesmen Are Liars," right, by Seth Godin. I think it was him, somebody, and it's this idea all salesmen are liars, and it's like, wow, that's quite a statement. Now, of course, it's making a generalized statement, but often, you watch a commercial, you're not getting the truth, you're getting manipulated, whether they try and create an emotional attachment to their project, or they'll try and virtue signal so that you'll think well of them, or whatever it is, and you've seen it. It's not honest, it's manipulative, right? Corporations, whatever. There's all kinds of examples. I would actually say that in today's world, manipulation, crooked, deviousness is actually standard operating procedure. And that's sad, but that's the world we're in now. You can't just trust people like you used to be able to. And so this is what the wisdom of God does. It brings us to a place where we can start to learn to identify that and be protected from it, because we start to see wisely and morally. And the better you get at that, the easier you're able to pick up on when someone is leading you out of that. And so that's a good thing. Another one of the reasons we should study God's wisdom and learn it and adopt it and internalize it and treasure it. So today, learn God's wisdom so you can be equipped to recognize the cons that are in the world. Lord, bless us all. Help us to do this. Give us your wisdom and shield us from these sorts of people. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless. Hopefully, if God wills it, then tomorrow I'll see you again for our next one, for verse 16.